Well, thank you for the warm remarks. So in order to build the startup ecosystem, and then many people are here. So thank you for all the remarks. The Try Everything 2030 opening and the ceremony is taking place. Now we are going to have a keynote presentation for this. We are going to invite two keynote speakers in order to predict the future technology changes and to get the insight, and we should refer to overseas cases. So let's invite our first speaker.
Founder of Geometrics Intelligence and the scholar of intelligence, artificial intelligence, Professor Gary Marcus from New York University.
Let's see. Great. So I'm going to talk about crisis and opportunities in future society brought by AI. And what I'm here to tell you, number one, is that we are at a historic moment, and the choices that we make right now are incredibly important. The history of AI is not written yet. I think if you read the media, people write it as if we have already achieved AI, but we're just on an early step in that journey. So I think we can all agree that AI has a chance that it could change the world. And there's a lot of hype saying that we're in the process now. Like you can see this incredible adoption of ChatGPT earlier this year, just rapid growth, 100 million users in a few months. And we know that there are potential applications in AI pretty much everywhere you can look, in medicine, in science, in writing, in advertising, anything that you might think about. But I'm here today to give you a little bit of skepticism, a little bit of concern, and not quite believe all of the hype. So AI could change the world, but the reality is right now, it doesn't work as well as many people would like us to believe. So you don't have to read everything here on the left, but I'll just give you the short version of it. Somebody asks one of these systems, which weighs more, a kilogram of bricks or 2 kilograms of feathers? I'm guessing that every single human being in this room can tell me that the 2 kilograms of feathers weigh more than the kilogram of bricks. But Google Bard took 3 paragraphs, sounds very intellectual, very erudite, and comes out at the end and says, so in a vacuum, 1 kilogram of bricks and 2 kilograms of feathers would weigh the same, but in the air, 2 kilograms of feathers would weigh slightly less than 1 kilogram of bricks. Well, this is a problem. It doesn't always happen this way, but we often get truth mixed together with obvious nonsense, as we've got here. So some of the sentences are true, some of them are false, they're all written in the same way, and people don't know what to believe. Depending on the wording, any given model might or might not get any particular question correct in any given day. I don't know if any of you ever watched Star Trek, but the Star Trek computer is not supposed to give you different answers on Tuesdays and Thursdays. It's supposed to give you the right answer. We have systems that have a level of randomness. So they're accurate with what we call some prompts, inaccurate with others, and not really to be trusted. Then there's a little bit of bad news already, and venture capitalists should maybe take note of this. That graph that I showed you that went up and up and up and that people extrapolated to the moon is already starting to fall. So people love these systems, but they're already getting a little bored. They're realizing the limitations. And we have major companies like JP Morgan and Apple saying, we don't want our employees internally to be using these things. So this is not actually news. AI has always been full of hype, going back to the earliest days. Marvin Minsky, before I was born, said within a generation, the problem of artificial intelligence will be substantially solved. And this is still not true 56 years later. We still have not substantially solved the problems of AI. We've made some progress, but in no way is what Marvin Minsky said true. Now, according to legend, November 2012 was the moment when everything changed. So a lot of people will tell you that deep learning changed everything. There's some truth in that, but there's also some not quite truth in that. So people said that deep learning achieved better results than ever before, and that's true, but they also said this would give us machines that converse with humans, and they said this in 2012. It's only sort of true right now. Sometimes you converse with them and they give you total garbage. And they said that we'd have driverless cars. We still only have driverless cars as demonstrations. We can't actually trust them. So I have been writing for a long time that there are actually some fundamental limitations to these systems. I started writing this in 2012 when deep learning became fashionable. In 2022, I wrote an article that made everybody in the AI field mad. It was called Deep Learning is Hitting a Wall, and people were really indignant. I said that these systems were going to hallucinate, make silly errors, and so forth. And then DALL-E came out, and everybody got even more angry at me, and they all kind of made fun of me. There were all these memes on the internet. I wrote an article called Deep Learning is Hitting a Wall, and people made fun of it. They were all sure that Gary had obviously been disproven. And then something really interesting changed, which is at the end of last year, I think people realized this stuff is not yet really fully debugged, that we can't really trust it. One of the things that happened last year at the end of the year is people realized that driverless cars had been a big suck on money. There have been $100 billion invested in driverless cars, and so far they're not really working. You know, Elon Musk promised in 2014 that we'd have driverless cars in 2015. In 2015, he promised we'd have them in 2016. He's repeated this every year up until the present. Some people are starting to be skeptical, and in fact, he got sued over it, and his defense wasn't, I was right all along. It was that, I mean, this is his lawyer's defense, said, well, maybe self-driving is a failure, but it's not a fraud. I mean, this is not a success story when that's your defense in court, is it was a failure but not a fraud. And then prominent people started to express the same concerns that I have been for years. So I've also been saying these things are dangerous, and OpenAI CEO Sam Altman said that, including yesterday in the Zoom call. And he also, acknowledged what I've been saying, which is it's incredibly limited. It's good enough to give a misleading impression of greatness, but it's a mistake to be relying on anything important right now. It's a preview of progress, but we have lots of work to do on robustness and truthfulness. So the very same things that he made fun of me earlier in 2022, he's kind of come around to saying. So there's an old saying that I'm borrowing here. Deep learning, large language models are a better ladder, but a better ladder doesn't necessarily get you to the moon. The real question is, if these ladders won't get us to the moon, what we would call artificial general intelligence, AI that we could actually trust to do whatever we wanted it to do, then what are we going to do? And my answer is we need to look to human beings, especially small children, and say, how do they figure out what the world is doing? Not because we want AI to be exactly like small children or like human beings, right? Human beings have lots of flaws. But we want to take some inspiration from human beings. And I'll give you 4 things we should take inspiration from. One is human beings are really good at abstraction. Large language models just look like they can abstract things, figure out something in a general way, but they can't really. So at the top here is what would be a great example, what we want AI to do. You want to be able to type something in English or Korean, what have you, type something in a natural human language and have the machine do it. So somebody does this here. And they would say, write 10 sentences about baseball and then print the sentences in sorted order from shortest to longest in terms of the number of words in each sentence. In parentheses after each sentence, state the number of words it contains. If programming were this easy, then everybody could do it. It would be fantastic. Maybe someday it will be, but right now you feed this into ChatGPT and it makes all kinds of mistakes. It says baseball is a popular sport. 3 words, but baseball as a popular sport is not actually 3 words. And you go through and sometimes it gets it right, sometimes it gets it wrong. It doesn't really have the abstract notion of counting words. And on the right, it tries to sort so that things should go up. You have 3, 6, 7, 10, you're sorting them by how many words, but then it goes up to 20 and then back down to 16 and 16 and 12 and up to 25 again. It doesn't really understand the concept of sorting, or really any concepts that we're talking about. The second problem is these systems don't really reason very well. They don't really understand logic. And so sometimes they work. I won't go through all the detail in the slide. Sometimes they work, but really they're looking at stored patterns, and they don't have the general truths of those patterns. It works for problems that follow a structure the model has seen before, but it doesn't work on new problems. And we see this in driverless cars, right? They're fine most of the time, and then they see something unusual. Like a Tesla ran into a jet airplane recently because it wasn't trained on jet airplanes. So it didn't understand the general logic. Don't drive into big, expensive things that are made of metal, which any human driver would understand without being told. And so Tesla actually drove into a jet because it couldn't really reason about this unusual circumstance. A third thing is a kind of technical thing from linguistics, but we build larger wholes out of smaller parts. And so to understand something, we're putting pieces together. So I can have a sentence like a red basketball with flowers on it in front of a blue one with a similar pattern. And anybody who's a native speaker of a human language can understand stuff like that. And then you do this with these image simulation things, and they get some red and they get some blue, but they don't really understand what it means for something to be a similar pattern. They don't really understand how the pieces compose, how they fit together. Human children pick that up when they're 3 years old. And then the biggest problem of it all is factuality, or what we call hallucinations. I actually anticipated this problem in 2001. People don't want to listen to me sometimes, but the fact is I made this prediction 22 years ago, and it's absolutely central to where we're stuck right now. These systems make stuff up. Like one of these systems made up a claim that Elon Musk died in a car crash. Well, why does it do that? It does it because it's looking at the statistics of words. And so there are people who own Teslas who die in car crashes. It doesn't understand the difference between owning a Tesla and owning Tesla, the whole company. And it doesn't know the facts about Elon Musk. It can't look them up in Wikipedia. This is the most ridiculous thing you could say. Do you know why? Because if there's anybody on this planet that we know is still alive, it's Elon Musk, because he's in the news every day and he posts on Twitter every day. So there's ample evidence that any good AI system should be able to consult to see that this man is alive. But it doesn't do what we think that it does. We imagine that these systems can reason, but they don't really. So it's important to realize large language models are not conventional software tools. They hallucinate. They make things up. They suffer from data leakage. So you put in data, you don't want anybody else to use it. You don't find that in a traditional database. They're essentially incorrigible. We can't really make them do what we want them to do. And even with vast data, they don't necessarily play by the rules. So GPT-4 has been trained on lots of chess games. It's been trained on the explicit rules of chess, and it still does crazy things like have a bishop jump over a queen that, you know, my 9-year-old, when she was 6, already realized you couldn't do in the game of chess. And so they're not particularly reliable, these systems, even though people talk about them as if they might be. So here's some lessons for business. Number 1, don't believe the hype. Number 2, beware of data leaks. What you put in that system might wind up anywhere. Can't really keep your data private. They're working on that one. Number 3, large language models will always hallucinate. Better AI is going to come along, but it's not here yet. Coding and boilerplate text, writing kind of common text are the best applications so far, but there are also some weaknesses there we could talk about later. The more that errors in your domain matter, the more that we actually probably need a better technology. I'll move on for right now. The other problem is there are many risks to society. So people are using these, for example, to create misinformation. That's going to manipulate elections. It's going to manipulate markets. There are all kinds of security problems that are coming with these systems. So what we really need at this point, I think, is recommendations for policy. We need policy around AI. So Dove was giving me the example. When we first had cars, there were lots of accidents. We made rules around them. We need to make rules around AI. So I've spent most of the last year really working on AI policy. I spoke in front of the US Senate next to Sam Altman in May, and I've spent a lot of my time doing this. And so here are a few quick suggestions. One is I think every nation needs to have its own AI czar, its own person running AI, its own cabinet level office for AI, where people are really keeping track of all of the different risks in AI and trying to figure out what we're doing about them. I think we also need a global AI agency where countries can come together, trade notes, work on things like the bias from these systems, the misinformation problems, and we hope that they'll never go completely out of our control, but we should actually be talking to one another across countries about what's going on. I think we also need something like the FDA in the United States where we approve a new drug. If somebody's just testing an AI system for research, that's okay. But if they're going to deploy it to 100 million people, we should say, what are the benefits of your system? What are the costs of your system? Why do we think that the benefits outweigh the cost? What can we do to reduce the cost? So we should have a requirement when you put something out that you do that. We need to have laws and enforcement around misinformation. So in my country, if one person says something that's not true, that's not a crime. But what if you have a machine that spends all day long making billions of pieces of misinformation? We might need new laws around that. And maybe most importantly, we need scientists in the loop figuring out how to do all of this. What's happening in the US is the big companies are meeting tomorrow with the senator who has the most influence on the policy, and there are no scientists in the room, and there are only a few independent thinkers. So the term we use is regulatory capture, when the big companies make rules to keep the smaller companies out. And I'm afraid that's what's going to happen in Washington right now. So having scientists there is important. So when we look back at the 2020s, we might see two possible futures. I'll go maybe 1 minute over, but I'm almost done. So a positive future is we might actually form a global AI agency. The idea of responsible AI might become prestigious. We might draw some of the brightest young people into figuring out how to make AI safe and responsible. New companies and new technologies could emerge if we don't keep the smaller companies out. AI could become more efficient in terms of both data and energy, which I haven't talked about today. And AI could really pay off its promise, which is to contribute massively to the world to address climate change, medicine, elder care, and so forth. So all of that could still happen. I'm not arguing that it won't. But we could also have a bleaker future where people in the AI community can't agree on what problems we're trying to solve. There's a lot of arguments, my problem is more important than your problem. We could get stuck on large language models and never, which is the technology we're using now, and never invent newer technologies. What we have now is a start, but I don't think it's what we want to wind up with. We could wind up with massive amounts of cybercrime. We could have really powerful AI systems that we can't control. Employment could go down. We could have civil wars and anarchy. So there's also a dark future. And so I'll just end with this, which is that the choices that we make now around artificial intelligence are going to shape the next century. If we don't have scientists and ethicists there with the companies and governments, we're probably not going to wind up in the right place. We can't afford not to regulate AI at all, but we also can't afford regulatory capture where the big companies dictate the rules and keep out the smaller companies. We have to get all of this right, and I don't think we have a lot of time to waste. And I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor. Now you please back to your seats. 고맙습니다. 첫 번째 기조 강연이었습니다. AI가
So we had the first keynote presentation. So opportunities and challenges brought by AI was shared, and how new trend can be used as a kind of strategist. Thank you for your insight. Let's move to the second keynote presentation. So we are going to invite the CEO, Dov Moran, who is known as the inventor of USB flash drive. Then let's invite him up to the stage.
CEO Dov Moran from Grove Ventures.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. You know, it's a very strange coincidence. There were two non-Korean invited, actually, as keynote speakers, myself and Professor Ogawi, and both of us are Jews, which is really strange. And there is a statement about Jews. Take any two Jews in the world, they will have three opinions. So I heard Mr. Gary talking about AI, and I'll be very happy to be the counter opinion, because I do believe that AI is very, very important factor that is going to change our life. But to do that, and by the way, talking about Jews, some people in Israel say that Koreans are the Jews of the Far East. So I have no proof to that, but knowing Korea very well, I was over 30 times in Korea, I do see the amazing potential relations, similarity between Israel and Korea. Talking about AI, the example of cars is an example I like very much. When first cars came to the market, they were terribles. The speed, anybody knows what was the first speed of cars? Actually, there were a few going 6 kilometers per hour, and later they upgraded to 12 kilometers per hour. You could run faster than the cars, and the distance the cars could go was very, very short. And there were many problems and many obstacles. And you know what? Horses are fine. You sit on a horse, it takes you wherever you want to go. Why do we need cars? There are lots of problems with cars. But then cars improved. Reality improved. Korean companies got into the market of cars. They make wonderful cars. We do see constantly improvement. Now, when cars came to the market, what did come with the cars? Car accidents. Guys, before cars, there were no car accidents. And some people could say, hey, car accidents are terrible because they cause big damage. People are dying. You look at car accidents in the last years, the numbers went up. 10 years ago, they began to go down. And there are less car accidents today than 10 years ago or 5 years ago, and the trend is very, very clear. And why the trend is clear? Well, first of all, cars, beginning of days of cars, no rules. Everybody could go any speed, right side, left side, But then governments, municipalities came and said, we need to have rules. We need to have rules. We will have to define rules for AI, and on this point, we are in a very, very good agreement. And then, clearly, over the years, over the time, we improve, we constantly improve. So AI today is making a lot of mistakes. The mistakes are stupid mistakes. These mistakes, clearly, at the next generation, will disappear. So if the the bug in the chess program, giving the ability of the tools to go one on top of the other, hey guys, next version, this will be clearly gone. There are still many, many problems. The ability to generate bias information, the ability to get into issues related to color, religion, bad sentences, insulting, chauvinism. All this stuff is an issue that exists, but every technology comes with problems. Every technology, cars, cellular, gaming, mobile, internet, but then comes the companies who brings the solution, and basically they work to improve the basic technology and make life better. Technology is making this world better with all the problems that are initiated by these new concepts and new approach that the technology is creating for us. And generative AI is one of the biggest revolutions that is coming with a huge influence on our life in many, many areas. We didn't mention that, but I have to focus on at least one issue, which is healthcare. Healthcare today is in a terrible situation. People talk about terrorism in Israel. In Israel, every year, there are about 30 people dying in terrorism. But 5,000 people are dying in hospitals just from infection. And no one talks about infection in hospitals. Why? Because there is no solution. But there are solutions. And technology has to find a way to bring those solutions. And I do believe that generative AI will help to bring solutions. Physicians. Every physician today is gathering his knowledge. And in very, very few cases, physicians are really sharing knowledge and know-how. But we could generate a much better healthcare services having all this knowledge gathered, analyzed, and making the superhero, super smart physician that his knowledge and understanding are based on a lot of data and history of thousands or millions of patients that went through similar situations. We can do a lot of things in healthcare, finding new medicine, doing medicine at home, understanding the impact of medicine. There are a lot of impact side effects that are not really tested well enough when a pharma company gets its FDA approvals. This is one example of good stuff that generative AI could bring to the market. And I do believe that this is a great opportunity for many, many companies to come in at these days and be active, helping to build generative AI or using generative AI in order to bring solutions, in order to make this world a better world. That's the best time. There's an Israeli company called Checkpoint. Checkpoint was a pioneer in bringing security to the internet. I do remember my days, people were asking me about, hey, there's this new company, Checkpoint. Do you know what they're doing? I said, hey, I have no clue. It's a security for internet. Who needs security for internet? It is very well secured. Being pioneer is not simple. Checkpoint was strong enough in order to stay alive, and today they have a value of over $20 billion, which is an Israeli company coming from nowhere and doing something that at the time seems very, very strange and maybe even not necessary. There is a place for many Korean companies to come in and bring innovation into the market. What's required to do that? First of all, Korean companies need to be more worldwide, globally, rather than locally. You have to think globally. One of the advantages of Israeli companies, they are built globally. Israel is a small market. I'll give you data, which data is very strange. Israel is a country of about 10 million people, roughly 100 unicorns. Korea, 55 million people, 24 unicorns. The numbers doesn't measure correctly. Now, Korea has its advantages. We don't have in Israel these large companies like Samsung, LG, Hyundai, Kia, SK. Israel is very strong in entrepreneurship, but the strength of Israel coming from the fact, the strength of the startups, coming from the fact that one, we are not afraid to fail. Failure is not a disaster. And I'm very happy to see that this understanding arrived into Korea, which I didn't see that years ago. The second thing, Israeli companies are always established globally rather than locally. You have to think globally. You have to think of how to send people to America, how to get them back to Korea, how to develop from the beginning in English to the American market and not to the Korean market. And you have to have good government that would support it, that would stand behind entrepreneurs, that would encourage and build the right ecosystem in order to bring Korea into the right place for this amazing country in this very new world that is built with all technology, where AI is part of that. Thank you very much, and good luck. Hooray to Korea.
Thank you very much for your wonderful keynote speech. 고맙습니다. 네, 이렇게 혁신을 주도하는 스타트업의 미래,
Future of startups that are leading innovation. So how to strategically utilize the new trends. We learned about them through keynote speeches. Hopefully their speeches inspired your businesses as well. Now, I'd like to open a photo session. So the last leg of the opening ceremony is a photo session. So venture investors and accelerators and startup business people are here. So we have this Try Everything 2023 under the slogan. So all the VIPs, would you please come up on the stage? The first two rows, people who are sitting in the first two rows, would you please come up on the stage for a photo session? And after that, you'll be guided to the exhibition booth.